All right. Hello and welcome, everybody.
Hello.
How many of you are inspired on making your first million? And how many of you would like to make your second million? The key is to getting to make your first. And I did share that story last night, and that is true. The first time that I figured out how to make money, I was not an overnight success. My first year in sales, I made $700. So I don't know if any of you can relate, but I'm going to be sharing with you the concept that changed my entire life. And I began developing this technology and this training system about 10 years ago when I was a broke, struggling salesperson. So after I graduated from college and got a degree, I did what most people do, which is to go get a job and begin working in corporate America. And they say that that's where you can live the American dream. And what I found was that it actually created the American nightmare. If you don't own your own life, and you're not able to dictate your own success and your own income thresholds, then someone else will dictate that for you. And here we are at one of the greatest learning institutions on the planet. And by the way, I want to just give a very grateful thanks to Mark Bertrand and the entire association here at Harvard for putting this on. So let's celebrate them. Right? One of my very favorite classes at my university was entrepreneurship. And the reason I loved entrepreneurship, and you've heard that theme today, is because you start getting into the minds of people who think outside of the box. And one of my very favorite professors that I ever learned from in my business school was someone who did not take a paycheck from the university. They made millions of dollars successfully in business and came back to the university to simply teach based on experience as opposed to theory. And so that's why I really am excited to be here today, is to share with you, number one, the struggle that I went through in business trying to figure out how to make my first million. And of course, when you're on that path and journey and you figure it out and you crack the code and you start successfully making money, my dreams were coming true. I did build out about $8 million in real estate holdings. I was living the dream. I had a home in Hawaii. I had the cars. I had the life. I had all of that. By 33 years old, I was cash flowing over $1 million a year. And it is true that when the economy collapsed in 2008 and I started to slide backwards, the real estate portfolio goes into the negative as opposed to the positive. You can no longer borrow against any equities. The whole market changed, and I think all of us are aware of what can happen in an economic downturn. And the truth is, I was one of those entrepreneurs. And the definition of entrepreneur, if you ever look up the definition, is it's a risk taker. Someone who's willing to take risk in exchange for gain. Well, also someone who's willing to take risk has to be willing to lose. And unfortunately, I lost it all. And I couldn't keep my hand on it. And you know, when you make money and then you lose it all, you start to try to grab and hold on to anything. And at that point in my life, I couldn't hold on to anything anymore, and I let it all go. But it was one of the best experiences of my life. For 18 months, my best friend and I moved into a storage unit. And we did the unthinkable. We took every single ounce of capital that we had. We sold personal coaching and anything that I could sell to generate enough cash flow because we had come up with an idea that we were fairly confident would change the world. And we did not know how big that scope was back then, but I knew that this was a game changer. And we needed the capital to go into production. One of the things I love about entrepreneurs, and those of you that have that entrepreneur spirit, is you're willing to literally do the things that people would never even think about or dream about in exchange for living that dream. How many of you have some form of a burning desire and you will pay whatever the price is to create success? And I applaud you for being here, like I said, at Harvard University, whether you're a student, whether you're a faculty, whether you're an alumni, or simply a VIP guest. Just to be here is an honor. Walking around the campus yesterday was something very magical for me and my business partner, and I just felt this overall sense of peace and serenity and calm that came across my soul and my spirit. Number one, it was humility for being invited to speak here. And number two, it was actually a feeling of peace knowing that I had a message that was worthy of sharing here. So I might not have been accepted as a student into Harvard University, but I can promise you this. What I'm about to share with you could possibly change your life. Are any of you excited? Yeah. All right, cool. So this little idea that I created as a program called Bank, and I want to share it with you over the next 30 minutes. I watched this movie once called Pay It Forward. How many of you saw that movie? So in the movie Pay It Forward, the little actor is in 7th grade, and he walks into the classroom as if this were the classroom, and Kevin Spacey was the instructor. And written on the chalkboard behind the screen, he had to lift up the screen to basically reveal what the project was going to be for the entire 7th grade year. And there was one assignment written on that chalkboard, and it said, think of an idea that can change the world and put it into motion. Now, of course, that was the entire theme of the movie, and what he worked on in his project was his version of the story. Today, what I'm about to present to you is my version of my 7th grade project. So I called the program Bank. I happen to have an affinity towards the word. Is there anyone in here allergic to making money? Okay. More money simply makes you more of who you are. So this is one of those things that you have to reflect inward to say, hey, am I a good steward of money? And am I someone who would do good in the world with money? Because I believe that our higher power needs people who are ultra successful that can create movement and change in the world and be good stewards of money. So I created an adoption towards how do we help people make a lot more of it so that they can do a lot more good and have that philanthropic approach to life. Now, what if there was a code, and what if you could crack a code to increasing a company's sales or your personal income by 300%? How many of you would want to know that code? How many of you would go through 4 years of rigorous study at Harvard University and complete and pass your exams and graduate if you could simply know that code? Right? So it would be something that you would be on this search and quest for a lifetime, and this is actually the code that I began looking for, and once I figured out how to crack it, it changed the whole game. Now, Robert Kiyosaki is an incredible mentor of mine. Have you read Rich Dad, Poor Dad? One of the absolute highest recommended books I could ever say if you have a personal aspiration to become a millionaire or to become financially independent or to become a business owner. Robert Kiyosaki, in my young adult life, once I graduated from college and now you're out into the real world, and what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I wanted to be successful. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to be a multimillionaire for all of these different reasons, and you each have your own. And Robert Kiyosaki, as I was studying to get an MBA, because I thought the only way to really advance professionally was to get an MBA. So I began studying just like you do. And a good friend referred me to this book and said, hey, you got to read Robert Kiyosaki's philosophy on creating wealth and financial literacy. And Robert Kiyosaki taught me there's a different type of MBA that you can get. And I said, well, what's that? And he says it doesn't require more school. So someone like me said, well, I like that program. What's it stand for? And he said it stands for Massive Bank Account. Now, how many of you like that MBA better? Okay. Now, it's ironic that I'm at Harvard saying this right now, right? Because some of you might have MBAs or maybe even PhDs. I also have a PhD, public high school diploma, right? And what I found out along the journey to creating wealth is that when I survey my friends that are really rigorous with their education is that, how many of us know some smart broke people? A few of us do, right? And so all things being equal, money is what pays the bills, and money is what makes your projects happen, what builds companies, what creates employment, what helps decrease the unemployment rates. Money drives this economy. And so I became someone who is passionate about pursuing that as an entrepreneur. Now, Robert Kiyosaki said something that was absolutely fundamental for anyone who aspires to be an entrepreneur and a business owner. And I want to share with you this quote because this is the crux of why I created what I created in the program called Bake. He says, the ability to sell is the number one skill set in business. The number what? Number one. And he goes on to say, if you cannot sell, don't bother thinking about becoming a business owner. Now, I have not checked out the classes that are offered at Harvard Business School yet. But if there's not a full fleet and course offering of classes to help you master sales, perhaps this is something to be considered. Because there's only two things that a business ever needs to survive in any economy. That's people and sales. So when you start thinking about that, a lot of us grow up with some type of a negative experience or a negative association with sales or ever being referred to as a salesperson, when in fact it's the most noble profession that you could ever be in. Sales is simply your ability to influence another human being. So in any type of economy, in any type of marketing, in any type of business culture or success, selling is at its core. Think about it. Imagine what would happen to our world economy if salespeople quit selling. If every website got shut down, every grocery store closed, no gas, no electricity, no nothing. So when you really understand that sales is at the crux of every successful entrepreneur and every business owner, and it's what drives this economy, what I learned early on is that the best thing I could ever do for myself to ensure my success as an entrepreneur, so that even if a hurricane or a typhoon comes and takes everything you have built your entire life away and smashes it in one quick second, that you have the ability to rebuild, get back on your feet, and turn it back into millions of dollars. How many of you would love that skill set? Okay, so this is where we begin to embrace the concept of selling, and how do you get good at it, especially when maybe you have never embraced the idea to become a salesperson. So I want to share this with you. I learned this from WAMA, the Word of Mouth Marketing Association, that the best salesperson outsells the average salesperson 57 to 1. Now, how many of you have ever been on the wrong side of this equation, right? Okay, so when I got involved in sales, obviously I was not an overnight success, and there's a myth out there that says you have to be born a salesperson. Well, there's no such thing. The best news is you're looking at someone in front of you today that was not born a salesperson, that doesn't believe anyone is born a salesperson, and I believe that you can be trained to become a very successful, profitable business owner and entrepreneur by learning how to sell. And so I want to share with you my story. I'm introduced. My name is Cheri. Sometimes people don't believe that, or they think this is like my Hollywood name. This is my real name, right? And 6th grade was a very tough year for obvious reasons. People made fun of my name. But it became part of who I am, a tree. And by the way, don't ever believe that money doesn't grow on trees, right? I'm the CEO of the company that I built with the bank company. And I'm a multiple 7-figure income earner in sales as a track record. And the only reason I share that with you is because I go around the world now training some of the best salespeople in the world how to increase their sales. And I think it's important that if you're going to learn a new sales methodology and apply it, that you're learning it from someone who's actually been there, done that, and made it. Would you agree with that? That this is no longer just theory or a hypothesis or my thesis statement to graduate. So I am the author and creator of the Bank Code, the personality system that I'm about to introduce you to, and I am an international authority on sales and training systems. Now, what I have designed is a technology, a tool, and a methodology that's designed to help you take it to the bank, and specifically I'm talking about your bank. So are you guys cool about making money? Okay. At the end of the day, even if you're young right now and you're still in your own studies, I promise you that taking it to your bank becomes pretty fun as you grow older. Now, my whole concept was built on the theory of the 4 personality types. And I did not invent those 4 personality types, but I'm going to give you a quick little orientation as to what the bank acronym stands for as I go through it. And I'm going to do that right now just to kind of give you a quick overview. The B in the bank system represents a class of people that's called blueprint. That's what I've designated it. And I call this category blueprint. Now notice I use a color association for each one of the 4 personality types, and I built in logic so that it made sense of why I would use the color blue with the word blueprint. What color do you think of when I say blueprint? Blue. Okay, so you see the logic in it, right? I've never heard of a red print or a green print or a yellow print. It's blue. And what I began noticing is that with these different classifications of 4 different types of people, one thing that I felt was really important in sales is to understand a lot of their methodologies, their thought processes, and their buying patterns. So when you meet someone who's a blueprint, you start looking at, well, what are their value systems? Think of a blueprint. They value stability, structure, systems, organization, rules, processes, procedures. When you start understanding what this person, what makes them tick, you start to understand what makes them buy. And in the sales process, this becomes critical empirical data in order to really facilitate that sell, close the deal, and get paid. Now, some of the things that I began recognizing was, could I identify and connect the personality type to the profession, and could I begin looking for patterns? So I began doing a lot of studying and research to see, when I met this type of a personality, did they have certain occupations? And I found that they did. The ones who really like structure and living inside of a box, like accountants, teachers, lawyers, managers, police officers, military, people who follow rules, organization, and structure. They enforce policies and code. So when you start meeting those type of people, you start understanding that, again, the way they make their decisions in life is based on a certain set of principles. I then began looking at human behavior and the way that they showed up and interacted with each other, and I started to make a game out of it. Could I, just based on your body language and the dress and the way that you appear and show up, could I begin to predict your code? And I found out that I could. And some of the things in common that I noticed, and I'll show you here, is that when it comes to meeting someone who's very formal and process-driven, that when you go to greet them, they do it in a very traditional way. So for example, right here, Richard, if I were meeting you for the first time, I'd give you a handshake and I'd say, nice to meet you. And that's very blueprint style. So let's practice. Turn to your neighbor, give them a handshake, and say, nice to meet you. Okay. Nice to meet you. So all of this starts to create a clue. Now, as we move on to the next personality type, the A in the bank system stands for action. Notice the color red. I classify these people as the movers and shakers and millionaire makers. They're like little sticks of dynamite. Think of the red paper around dynamite. Also, I use the color red because action personality types in life only know how to drive or go one speed. What is it? Fast. That's right. Full speed ahead. And so when that needle starts approaching the red line in the car, right, when the RPMs get really revved up, that's how they live their life. And of course, action personality types also come with a fairly substantial ego. A can kind of stand for arrogant. And they'd see themselves as some type of a VIP or celebrity in their own mind. So what color carpet do they like to walk down? Red, exactly. So these are these type of people. Now, when you start studying, the action personality type becomes completely separate from the blueprint. And as I began looking at them, I realized the action personality type is someone who values things like freedom, flexibility, spontaneity, taking massive action. They love opportunity. As an example, if you say the word opportunity to a blueprint, do they come towards you or do they run away? They run away. Opportunity to a blueprint sounds too risky. So you end up losing the deal, as opposed to opportunity to someone who's an action personality type is going to come towards you and embrace that because it sounds exciting and it sounds potentially profitable. So when you start looking at these types of behavior patterns and associating it, it's starting to make a lot more sense. Now, I started looking for what careers do the action type of people migrate towards, and you'll see them as entrepreneurs, you'll see them as athletes, actors, celebrities, performers, public speakers, anything that gives them the limelight and the attention and the world is their audience. So when you start understanding that about an action personality type, all of a sudden, once you know the system, you begin knowing how to market to them and message to them and sell to them completely differently than this other group of people. When it comes to interacting with them and dressing, you know, if they walk through this door and you observe that person's human behavior, you're looking at what they're wearing, everything about them is what classifies them as an action personality type. Do you think that an A person likes to dress sharp? What do you think? Yes. Do you think they care about their image? Do you think they like to spend a lot of money? Yes. Okay. So the action personality type is the one that will buy your most expensive suite of products and services. They don't want to be classified like the average human being. If the average person, like the blueprint, is buying it based on a budget, the A-style person wants to buy the VIP style treatment, something that's exclusive, etc. That's why airplanes sell coach, business, and first class, so that there's those types of people that can be treated, wined and dined. Now, when it came to greeting them, again, because I'm trained in sales, I began looking for this type of behavior. When they go to greet someone, do you think they do the traditional formal handshake, or are they a little bit more animated? They're more animated. So what's an appropriate greeting for an A? A hug? No way. That's way too mushy. It's going to be a high five, right? So let's practice. Turn your neighbor, give them a high five, and say, take it to the bank.
Take it to the bank.
Take it to the bank. Yes. Okay. And I'm not sure if this has come to the Harvard campus, but it's around the world. Besides the high five, there's also the knuckle bump or the fist bump. Have you guys seen that one? Of course, yeah, right? So these are some little indicators. Now, the third personality type and class of people that I realized in the business world and in the sales world is that there's this third category that represents N. N stands for nurturing. This is a much more softer, gentle, loving group of people. I use the color yellow by association because I want you to think of sunflowers, sunshine, happy faces, and they've got a heart of gold. Exactly. So when you start realizing some of their core values of what they value in life and therefore how they make their buying decisions in business is they value relationships, authenticity, personal growth, community, charity, philanthropy, the things that pay it forward and give back and that make a difference. They're not capitalists. They're not people who are driving the bottom line. They're not people who would ever fire anybody or even step on a bug, right? They love nature, they love people, and they love making an impact. So if you understand how to begin marketing differently towards them, now you start having a completely different group of people. And if you show up like a blueprint, you're going to be far too stiff and boring. If you show up like an action personality type, you're going to be far too aggressive and overwhelming. So you need to show up like a nurturer wants to be received. Now, when it comes to greeting a nurturer, how do you think they like to be greeted? That's right. You guys already guessed it all, right? And they literally have campaigns around the world where they'll hold up street signs saying, give free hugs, right? And come and hug me. So let's practice. Give your neighbor a hug, right? And say, I love that you came here today.
I love that you came here today.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you. All right. Some of the guys are feeling lucky, I can see, right? You're like, all right. So this is a very warm, loving, gentle person. And as I tell the story and have it unfold, you'll see that the way that they make decisions and the people that they build communities with or cultures with is very, very different. And in the business world, you have to be able to understand this or else you're losing out on a significant market segment. And this leads us to our last and final classification of the 4 personality types. And then I'll tie this story together about what was significant about it. Is the 4th category is called K for knowledge. Now these are the super smart, intellectually driven people. People whose IQs go off the charts, right? They don't even know their score because they broke the scale. And the knowledge personality type, the reason I use the color green is for a few reasons. One, if there's someone who loves information to a point where they study it, they read it, they lock themselves in a library, they love data, spreadsheets, charts, algorithms, formulas, etc. Microsoft Excel logo is what color? Green. Or in the movie The Matrix, if they get so into their computer world and programming code and building websites, what color was the code written in? Green. Or if their mind is so advanced that they can take an automobile that runs on gas and turn it into an automobile that runs on solar or electricity, what color technology is that called? Green. So now you see the association of the color green. I actually had a very smart IT consultant come up to me who classifies himself as a K personality type. And he said, Cheri, I can give you another reason to use the color green for Ks. And I said, what's that? He says, we're green with envy. And I said, tell me more. He goes, well, oftentimes we're the smartest people in the room or a company, but we're not paid the most. So here it is ironic that we're at one of those institutions where your intellect is part of what deciphers your probability of success in the world. But in fact, there are smart people who make a lot less than people who have lower IQs who figure out different ways of doing business. And so I think it's fascinating, especially if you can apply, if you're one of those ones that's more gifted than the average person in terms of your intellect, then learn to leverage that and turn it into profitability, not just information. Would you agree with that? Okay. So when it comes to occupations that the K's gravitate towards, you're going to see things like engineers and scientists and researchers and people who are attracted to anything powered by the mind. They value things like information and learning, competency, accuracy, the big picture, universal laws and truths, research and development, and one thing that's absolutely critical that drives them is logic. Everything you say to them must make sense, and if it doesn't make sense, they can no longer even hear your messaging any further. So when I began studying this K personality type, I realized that first of all, these people are so intellectually driven that in fact sometimes they don't appear human. I've nicknamed them my K-bots, right? Because they're very robotic in the way they make their decisions. So I had to find a way, how could I approach them? Do you think these K people are very touchy and warm and friendly, or are they more reserved and analytical? What do you think? More reserved and analytical. As a matter of fact, touching them can almost be offensive. They don't let people into their very close private space, okay? Because again, everything is powered by their mind, not typically their heart as their primary code. So I began looking, well, how can I greet them? You know, what about shaking hands and high-fiving? That's obnoxious. Hugging them would just push them over the edge. So I found a different way to greet them, right? Yes. Right? I just give them the good old-fashioned Star Trek Vulcan salute. And what I'm basically saying as an entrepreneur or a salesperson to them is that, listen, I know you're smarter than me. I didn't come here to compete with your IQ. I came here to give you access to data that you're going to find interesting, and I'm going to encourage you to study it and come up with the conclusion that I've already come up with myself based on feedback from experts. So now you begin having a completely different interaction with this personality type, and that's who I affectionately call my Ks, or my knowledge personality type. Now, why bank? So I just wanted to create a quick classification of the 4 personality types. Let me tell you why I created this program. I mentioned earlier that I did not invent the 4 personality types. I was never that smart. It dates back centuries in time to Hippocrates, who actually made the theory famous. And Hippocrates, obviously known as the father of medicine, created this theory called the 4 temperaments, and he would actually diagnose his medical patients differently based on one of these 4 classifications. And centuries in time later, many experts and smart people, psychologists, PhDs in human behavioral studies, etc., have turned this into some type of a personality typing or behavioral matrix and created assessments. How many of you are familiar with the studies of 4 personality types or ever taken an assessment? Okay, almost all of us have in the entire room. And this room is typical all around the world. In every country I've ever been in, people are familiar with this style of learning, and they may have studied it before also. So what's the point? As a young salesperson, I began learning about 4 personality types and was always interested in what they had to say about how people are different. And I studied many of the great famous ones, like the DISC program or the color code or Myers-Briggs, and there's a whole bunch of them. Companies spend millions and billions of dollars on this type of learning. What's the point? Having studied a lot of those programs, what I found was they all had one thing in common. Not one of them helped me make $1 more of revenue in my business. So knowing about people and personality types was not the game changer. And so that's when I discovered the missing link. And 10 years ago, when this light bulb went off for me and I was a broke, starving salesperson, the missing link that I discovered was that not one of them ever taught me how to classify that personality type as a customer and how do they make their buying decisions. If I could crack the code of figuring out who you are in one of the 4 classifications and figure out a scientific formula and drill it down to perfection as to how you make your buying decision, could it and would it work? And I began studying this on my own. The system that I had did not exist. Now, I was inspired by a man named Tony Robbins. How many of you know him? Right? So Tony Robbins shared this quote with me, and it was one of those thoughts, like here you have the iLab. I can't wait to go over and visit the iLab. If I were a student at Harvard University, this is where I would have come up with this concept. Tony Robbins said, let your prospect determine your presentation. So if, in fact, there's 4 personality types, how many sales presentations should I have? 4. Yet how many are most of us trained to have? 1. one website, one brochure, and one presentation. So what happens is, because we're trained in the business world to have one presentation, and we've all been fed the same unfortunate myth that in order to get more yeses, you have to get more what? No's. And this is one of the biggest myths in sales ever, and too many people adopt that, and they just unfortunately miss the marketing message, miss closing the sale, miss the opt-in, miss the opportunity to convert it into revenue in their company because they're delivering the wrong message most of the time. The only reason that they're closing sales is because by chance they happen to be saying the right thing to that customer at the right time based on the code, but they're doing it from an unawareness perspective. So what I created was a system that would allow me to profile the customer and to match the corresponding message and deliver a sales presentation based on exactly what their code is and how they buy. When you look at this and you understand the basic common sense of this, can you push play? Sorry. Okay, you look at the common sense of this based on the theory of the 4 personality types, whichever one is my dominant position, okay? Like in this case, the red, Cheri Tree is classified as an action personality type, which means when I look at the world through my point of view, I'm doing it through red lenses. And if I'm selling to you, if I'm talking to you, whether I'm selling you a car or a website or consulting packages or insurance or financial services, whatever, from this point of view, I'm only saying the right marketing message to 25% of my audience, or in other words, 1 out of 4. Well, what this also meant, based on this theory, is that I'm saying and delivering the wrong marketing message to 3 out of 4, or 75% of my efforts are going to a lost cause. How many businesses do you know can survive on missing the mark 75% of the time? And what if there was a way where you could accurately and correctly deliver the right message 100% of the time? Do you think that this would change the game? Do you guys think that? Okay. So basically, I'm just going to take a couple more minutes to wrap up, okay? The concept is no matter what you do when you go out there into the business world, whether you have a job, you're building your own company, you're an entrepreneur, or a home-based business, you have to profile your customer before you ever sell to them. See, if Tony Robbins, if what he said was true, where he said, let your prospect determine your presentation, if you take it literally, what that means technically is that you're forbidden to sell and to market to them until you know their code. Why? Because you're about to get it wrong 75% of the time, and that begins to cost an enormous amount of lost revenue and human capital and marketing dollars on the wrong messaging. So what I ended up developing was a system of how to crack the code and take it to the bank. See, this concept right here, this little diagram, is something called a cryptex. A cryptex is based on a combination of 2 words. Cryptology, which is the science of locking up secret information, and codex, which is the written script or scroll that's locked inside that device. Now, in the movie The Da Vinci Code, how many of you saw that movie? So the secret to the Holy Grail was locked inside of this cryptex, and Tom Hanks, who plays the actor, was in heavy pursuit of trying to figure out what was the code because he wanted to reveal the secret to the Holy Grail. The problem is, if he didn't know the code, it wouldn't open up, and this little device was booby-trapped with a vial of vinegar that the secret message was wrapped around, and if the device was tampered with in any way, that vial of vinegar would shatter open, dissolve the papyrus scroll, and leave him with absolutely what? Nothing. So what's the analogy? The analogy that I invented with the bank system is I want you to imagine from this point forward, every single person that you talk to, every student, every professor, every customer, every prospect, every client, is wearing a little invisible cryptex around their neck or hanging on their keychain. And that cryptex has a code. Locked inside this device, imagine if you could open it successfully as a little scroll that would tell you exactly what to say to them to get a yes, to have them want to buy, or to have them buy your idea. How many of you would desperately want to know that code? Okay? And yet, how many of us accidentally break open that vial of vinegar and walk away with nothing? So when I started realizing this, I thought, oh my gosh, could this be the idea that changes the world, at least my world, my income level? And as I began applying this philosophy, everything changed. See, I wanted to come up with a system that could literally crack the code in less than 90 seconds. And I figured out a way, and I wish I had the time to share it with you today. If you come to me and talk to me during the break, I'll show you, but what I invented was a set of 4 cards, and we're also creating the electronic version of this, where the customer simply sorts them and places them in order. It reveals the code of what their bank code is, and then we created the exact formula down to a science of how to alter and perfect your sales messaging so that they want to buy that product every single time based on their code. Our philosophy with bank is once you know their bank code, they'll give you their PIN code. Right? Okay? So that's what I have to share. And if you want more information, you can come and talk to us about this. But this little program changed my whole life. It's designed to increase sales by 300% because you're able to increase above what your normal personality type classification is. If you can learn how to talk to 2 out of 4, 3 out of 4, or 4 out of 4, you can increase your sales by 300%. And I'll just quickly show you. My life before bank as a salesperson, where I made 100% commission based on my ability to sell a product, close a deal, collect the money, and get paid. For 5 years, it took me to go from $700 in net commissions to $72,000, and I struggled. I studied every program, I bought every book, I hired every coach. I really wanted to make $100,000 a year, and I just couldn't seem to do it. When I figured out this concept and invented the bank program, the very next year my income went up to over $500,000, a 695% increase, and within 3 years, nearly 1,400% increase and over $1 million. Today, bank has become a global phenomenon. We're 18 months into the market. We've taken it across the United States into Canada. We've taken it throughout Europe, South Africa. We just got back from launching it over in Europe, Asia, South Africa, and across the United States. And what it's designed to do is teach people how to increase their sales 300%, connect faster with people, deliver the right presentations, deliver a more powerful competitive sales force because you know exactly how to message every single person and every single piece of what you're doing. And just like they mentioned, Les Brown said bank is a game changer. This might be the first time you're hearing about it, but I can promise you it won't be your last. And I want to thank Mark and, again, the entire group here for inviting me to come and speak and to share this revolutionary idea with you. Thank you.